Chapter 1. Environments are changing. You should too. The Joint Special Operations Task Force, or the Task Force, TF, had to undergo a significant change during the Iraq War. In 2003, it felt that it had no experience fighting in the conditions of the new environment. The newness lay in the increased speed of communication and networking, and the enemy's ability to adjust goals partway through. However, the U.S. Army was more used to exhaustive drills and planning. It was not ready, however, to be agile and maneuverable. The digital era commands that we become more maneuverable, agile, and flexible in our decisions and situation assessment. Based on the process of adaptation to these new conditions, a group of like-minded professionals from the military and academia came up with important implications for all organizations. Number 1. In Iraq, the Al-Qaeda, AQI, men were not superheroes, usually appeared understaffed and lacked resources. Nevertheless, they were resilient in strategies and adaptation, but too categorical in their minds. They made better use of 21st century tools. Number 2. Environments evolve, and so should our strategies of working with and within them. What worked for our ancestors is not suitable anymore. The book is not an account of the war. It is how wartime strategies can facilitate adaptation for the challenges companies of different scales face today. Chapter 2. In the 21st century, learn to adapt fast, as being efficient is not enough. The task force was an organization made of different smaller ones and contained only the top military and special operations units. It had over 40 years of experience with skills at the level of mastery. However, the TF's ways didn't seem to work when fighting the terrorist group, even though the AQI's preparation, resources, and knowledge ceded to the TF. In theory, the TF defeating the AQI was just a matter of time. Later, General McChrystal learned why it was a much more difficult task. The task force surgically perfected small-scale operations. However, with Al-Qaeda, they were to lead the war with no clear plan for winning. Learning from the Iraqis, the TF made the following changes: horizontal fluidity as opposed to strict vertical hierarchy, shared consciousness as a way to pass down information, decentralized decision-making process. Adaptability, not efficiency, must become our central competency. Stanley McChrystal. Previously, winning the war was mostly a matter of correct mapping. In Iraq, the TF faced a new reality, a virtual one. The solid ground that had to be conquered step by step was substituted with the immediacy of online coverage. Multiple mobile groups replaced headquarters of the enemy, so whiteboards took the place of maps. Relations between objects were given prominence over them, opening broader possibilities for adjustment to the new conditions. Wars used to be carried out according to several principles: preparation by drills to achieve precision, mastery of foreseeable scenarios, victory through mass concentration of power and resources at the crucial place and time. The value of precision in military training is automatism that can save soldiers' lives. McChrystal uses the experience of Frederick Winslow Taylor, who was a 19th century Quaker, to show that, in the world of industrial management, precision and predictability were the tools that helped reduce costs and increase productivity. Scientific management, as this approach was called, reduced workers to thoughtless machines. It did more than humiliate laborers. It underestimated the uniqueness of each person's mind and will. However, this reductionism became popular among the military leaders as trained, predictable soldiers were easier to control. Taylor's ultimate optimization philosophy might be one of the most significant influences behind today's desire to do our best, be most efficient, and leave no time for being idle. Its logic is traced to the usual order of tasks in one military operation: find, fix, finish, exploit, analyze. Despite the perfection of the routine, it had one serious shortcoming. It didn't take into account the nature of the target to find, fix, finish, and so on. The target of the 2004 Iraq War had evolved and required a new approach. Chapter 3. Advances in information technology made the world less predictable. Not only has the world become faster, but it's also more interconnected than ever before, and thus more interdependent. Everyone with access to the internet has gained prominence and the ability to influence the course of events. This seemingly absolute freedom raises several ethical questions, like who is to be held responsible for actions taken. Moreover, the necessity to regulate and create appropriate legal mechanisms to control internet users' behaviors is still a burning issue. The butterfly effect, described by Edward Lorenz, American mathematician and meteorologist, probably best explains the complexity General McChrystal and his soldiers were facing in Iraq. In this case, complexity means interdependence of all particles that make up a larger body, organism, ecosystem, etc., and their ability to influence one another, sometimes in unpredictable ways. When something is complicated, it consists of several smaller items that make each other work linearly. On the other hand, complex does not go from A to B to C, and so on. A can lead to F, F to Z, Z to B, and F simultaneously. It is uncertain and hard to define. Complexity means that the world is not mechanical and can hardly be calculated to the fullest. Not all systems are complex. Some of them have many components that still function linearly. The complex is, according to economist Friedrich Hayek, national economies, the human brain, and society. Complicated is the branch of industrial production where one step leads to another with no surprises. The way we interconnect and network today makes our relationships as humankind also complex, as we can impact each other's lives in ways unknown before. Using complicated solutions to complex problems will cause failure. Big data is not a reliable mechanism to predict what could happen. It gives information on why and how things happen, but offers little insight on how they will develop in the future. Using big data, we can learn how things happen statistically, on average, but precision is not at issue here. Chapter 4. To keep up with changes, choose to be resilient and effective. Whatever the size, organizations must learn to be resilient if they want to survive modern-era challenges. Resilience implies the ability to withstand possible strokes of misfortune. Moreover, risks and dangers are not phenomena to be controlled and avoided, but possible occurrences that need to be dealt with. We have forgotten how to deal with the unexpected, wishing for a controlled and predictable future, but shocks can season our spirit. McChrystal distinguishes between robustness and resilience. The former refers to powering through difficulties, whereas the latter addresses the ability to estimate the damage and reorganize if necessary. Thus, robust objects are carefully designed, resilient, bio and IT systems. The transition from robustness to resilience entails interconnecting system elements to work independently of each other and together as a whole. In complex environments, resilience often spells success, while even the most brilliantly engineered, fixed solutions are often insufficient or counterproductive. Stanley McChrystal. Efficiency is no longer a critical skill, as we live in an unpredictable, volatile environment. Instead, we should strive for effectiveness, which means doing the right thing when the time is right. This effectiveness implies the ability to adapt and invent solutions on the go. The faster, the better. Did you know the British Army was established in 1707, whereas its first Special Operations Unit, the Special Air Services, SAS, dates back to 1950. Chapter 5. Hierarchies are becoming obsolete, whereas intersection points make smaller units into one larger team. A command is a strictly organized vertical hierarchy, where its leader issues orders and oversees all processes, while a team is more horizontal, with its participants being not cogs but active and mostly equal co-creators. A team's structure still includes the figure of a leader, but a trusting and supportive one. When team members are familiar with and trust each other, they evolve into an intuitively operating organism. Apart from trust, team players need to make peace with the idea that one common goal everyone is working towards might be changing. Moreover, interim goals might not be a set reality. It is important to remember that not all possible outcomes can be calculated and foreseen, but we can adjust our treatment. The field of emergence examines how complex patterns and forms can arise from a multiplicity of simple, low-level interactions. Stanley McChrystal. The nature of agile decision-making is emergent. One factor that allows any team member to adapt to the changing environment's challenges is the lack of reductionist control. Teams can achieve much more when all their members have individual freedom. Interdependence and trust lead to seamless collaboration. Technology might facilitate our decision-making processes, but we should not become too reliant on it. Every organism consists of smaller parts. These parts function individually, in groups, and as a larger whole. The same is true about organizing work in a company today. People as singular units perform their tasks, and in a team, they contribute to shared success. No matter how different their scopes of activity are, teams can back each other up, all supervised but not overwhelmed by a super team of responsible authorities. An efficient, not effective organization resembles an hourglass. Both of its parts are essential, yet they are connected only at a choke point. The number of intersection points between all existing teams needs to be optimally increased. Separate teams within a larger whole need to have a sufficient number of ways to communicate and interact. Command of teams is also a possible combination of smaller agile units and a rigid superstructure that issues orders and controls their work. Team of teams is currently the best way to organize work. However, it seems doable for smaller companies, whereas large ones face the challenge of scaling their employees' interconnectedness. Luckily, not all persons need to be connected, but the team they are a part of do. Chapter 6. Performing your usual tasks, venture to see the bigger picture and opt for transparency. Automation of labor that came as industrial success 2 centuries ago influenced our everyday routines and how we work and relate to the world at large. Our view became relatively narrow, and we learned to particularize and focus solely on the things we do. The other side of this reductionist approach is parceling information to keep some of it secret. However, seeing the bigger picture, how our efforts relate and complement each other, is a much sought skill today. We need to become global in our thinking and choose sharing instead of controlling when no direct threat is indicated. A comprehensive integrated approach means awareness of the critical units and processes that make a system work. Indeed, not everything can be calculated and foreseen, but knowing how things work or are likely to work separately and together gives us the edge. Learning to approach phenomena holistically requires education. Training, however, helps resolve singular, predictable situations. Our work environments have also been evolving. The managerial revolution, as management historian Alfred Chandler put it, had smaller companies integrate into larger ones. Their structures became even more vertical and rigid, somewhat reminiscent of beehives, and the number of offices separating workers from each other grew. Top management pursued a corner office as a status symbol. Such a delineated structure guaranteed the stability of a bureaucratic paper flow. Corporate structures of the past century emulated the efficiency of the assembly line, which made most of them ineffective. Nowadays, the market leaders, such as Google and Facebook, opt for open space work environments to ensure collaboration and flow of ideas between different team members. They are also thought to have equal access to the information that might influence how they do their work. Moreover, employees have the freedom to decide how to use the information at hand. The cultivated chaos of the open office encourages interaction between employees distant from one another on the org chart. Stanley McChrystal. Stanley McChrystal argues that changing the work environment may bring about only superficial improvements. Organizational culture needs revision, and transparency should be given priority. By transparency, McChrystal means all teams' access to the current state of affairs in an organization. Chapter 7. Choose what is right for you and good for the group. The prisoner's dilemma, gist, is when 2 people working on a common task are most likely to act within their interests at their counterpart's expense. This logic explains how employees and teams are encouraged to compete rather than collaborate within a company. Competition, even though still encouraged within companies, rarely brings the best possible result. We began to make progress when we started looking at these relationships as just that, relationships, part of a network, not cogs in a machine with outputs and inputs. Stanley McChrystal. However, for collaboration to be successful, it is not necessary that everyone from one team cooperates and bonds with everyone from the other. To establish contact and develop shared consciousness, each team needs to choose a representative to be its eye and brains. Teaching people to collaborate requires showing how their individual story fits into the bigger picture of the group they work in. Contemporary management of shared consciousness relies on 2 strategies. 1, transparency. Team members have a common goal, know, and trust each other. They can also adapt their efforts if the goal is changing. 2, sufficient bonds between teams are achieved through the introduction of liaison programs. Did you know? According to UT professor Peter Stone, 95% of road accident deaths that occur at intersections are attributable to human error. Chapter 8. Not superior to other team members, a leader should create a conducive environment for their employees to grow. Even when communication between the team members is fast-paced and direct, the hierarchical bureaucracy of decision-making can stagnate the process. Most of the decisions can be taken without the leader's approval, as they are usually not responsible for a thorough study and analysis of the issue. Micromanagement is possible when organizational culture has evolved to sharing power because any employee needs space for innovation and creativity. This is a question of decentralization. The leader might find it hard to let go of superiority and to give up some tools of influence. However, this is a personal psychological issue that might improve through several therapy sessions. Decentralization of decision-making, equal access to information, and individual good judgment empower employees and ease collaboration. The role of the leader is changing, and so should be our expectations of them. As an employee, instead of solely relying on the ultimate vision of the one in charge, they should be able to act reasonably and take responsibility. However, the figure of the leader is not obsolete. McChrystal uses the metaphor of a well-kept garden and its master, the gardener, to explain what a present-day leader should be like. Nurture and encouragement bring individual workers and teams to success faster than control and punishment. Today's leaders need to learn to delegate and entrust subordinates with responsibility at the same time, creating favorable working conditions for them. Moreover, a leader is always the one on display, and many may look up to them. When a leader is open, interested, ready to listen, and treats everyone else with respect, the others copy their style subconsciously. Thinking out loud can be a frightening prospect for a senior leader. Ignorance on a subject is quickly obvious, and efforts to fake expertise are embarrassingly ineffective. Stanley McChrystal. Leaders are often thought to be omniscient, which supposedly implies that they are strong. However, strength lies in being human, reasonable but prone to making mistakes, respectful and not ignorant of others, working toward the common good rather than megalomaniac. Conclusion. Information technologies are still offering new means of connection and networking. They were also instrumental in transforming the way we perceive reality. We see it as complex and unpredictable in the new century, not complicated and linear as we used to. Nevertheless, technology is not the only thing that guarantees our successful interaction and collaboration. The human factor plays a crucial role. Many organizations fail to see how things work nowadays and keep clinging to the old proven ways. Mechanistic models of the world reflect our desire to run and control. Doing that, we ignore that complicated and unpredictable processes make up the intricate network of reality. Many employees are still encouraged to compete with one another, as if they were animals in the natural environment, trying to make their way to the top. However, competition has proven to be not the best way when it comes down to producing outstanding results. Competition forces creativity rather than nurtures it. From that angle, it facilitates burnouts. The task force managed to evolve, responding to the challenges of a changing environment. The sharing of information and power proved successful. However, it turned into a value only when the context was appropriate and everyone was capable of doing the right thing. Environments change. People need to change as well by becoming more flexible, adaptable, self-sufficient. Many of us have been raised to fear change. Now we need to learn to welcome it. Traditional hierarchies are cumbrous and often complicate the process of decision-making. The role of a leader is also different. A strict, dominant, and all-knowing father is substituted with a nurturing, respectful, and mature parent. Try this. Think of any group work or activity in which you participated. It doesn't have to be a work-related situation. You might look into some volunteer work you've done or a family emergency that required your input. Try to recall if it was easy or difficult for you to assume responsibility, and look for creative solutions to your part of a deal. Were you too reliant on the authority of your group leader? On the contrary, did you feel the pressure to act or think a certain way? How comfortable were you with the way you approached the problem? What could you have done to feel more confident and resourceful?